Ever catch yourself rereading the same sentence like 3 times trying to make sense of it?
Happens to the best of us.
Turns out that's how AI used to wrestle with language, too.
Yeah, like trying to understand a story one word at a time.
Talk about tedious. But not anymore, right? That's where this whole transformer thing comes in.
Exactly.
Big changes happening in AI land, and we're diving into all of it today.
It's huge.
So, from what I've gathered, the transformer is basically changing the game when it comes to how machines process language.
Totally. It's like the difference between trying to assemble a puzzle by only looking at one piece at a time
Oh, I can already relate to this.
versus suddenly seeing the whole picture all at once.
Okay, now that's an image I can get behind. So, how's it work? Give us the rundown.
The key is this thing called self-attention. Sounds kind of new agey,
A little bit, like a self-help mantra or something?
but trust me, it's way more powerful than it sounds.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. What is self-attention?
So imagine being able to instantly grasp the connections between every single word in a sentence, no matter how far apart they are.
Whoa, okay, that's a lot of connections.
That's the power of self-attention. It's like having a superpower that lets you see the whole web of meaning in an instant.
So we're talking next level understanding here, not just processing words faster, but actually grasping the meaning behind them.
Precisely. It's the difference between simply hearing words and actually understanding what they mean in context.
It's like those old GPS systems, right? The ones that can only handle one turn at a time. You'd get lost so easily.
Perfect analogy. Traditional language models, like RNNs, those are recurrent neural networks. We're kind of like those old GPS units.
RNNs. Got it.
Fine for basic stuff, but as soon as things got complex, they'd get lost.
Well, most of us are working with sentences more complicated than turn left in 500 feet. Language is messy, full of nuance.
And that's where those traditional models hit a wall. They just couldn't handle the nuances, the long-range dependencies, those connections between words or phrases that are far apart in a sentence.
So they had missed the forest for the trees, basically.
Exactly, and that's why they struggled with tasks like, say, translation, which requires a really deep understanding of how ideas connect across a text.
That's where the transformer comes in, right? This idea of seeing the entire picture.
Exactly. Instead of analyzing words one by one, it looks at all the words in a sentence simultaneously and figures out how they relate to each other.
Okay, so far so good. I think I'm following. But how do you go from self-attention, this ability to connect all the dots, to a machine that can actually, translate languages or understand complex text? That's the part that still feels like magic to me.
Right.
Like, how does that actually work in practice?
Let's take an example. Imagine the sentence, "I arrived at the bank after crossing the river." A traditional model might get tripped up here
Why is that? Seems like a pretty straightforward sentence to me.
because the word bank could have two different meanings here.
I see what you're getting at. Could be a financial institution or the edge of a river.
Exactly.
And context is everything.
And this is where the transformer's self-attention superpower kicks in. Because it's looking at all the words at once. It understands that river and bank are closely related in this context.
It's making connections, like a detective piecing together clues.
Exactly. And it's doing all of this in parallel, weighing multiple relationships at the same time, which is incredibly efficient.
No more getting bogged down in individual words or phrases. This thing is built for speed and accuracy.
Precisely.
Okay, this is pretty mind-blowing stuff.
And we're just getting started.
All right, so we're back. Still trying to wrap my head around all this transformer business.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But before the break, we were talking about self-attention, how the transformer can see the whole sentence, the whole picture at once.
Right. And one of the coolest examples of this is how it's totally shaken up the world of machine translation.
Yeah, you mentioned something about a BLEU score.
The BLEU score.
Yeah. What was that again?
It stands for Bilingual Evaluation Understudy.
Bilingual Evaluation Understudy. Catchy.
Yeah, not the most exciting name,
Yeah.
but it's basically a way to measure how good a machine translation is.
Okay, so like a standardized test for AI translators.
Exactly. And let me tell you, the transformer aced it.
Really? How much better is it than the old systems?
We're talking a BLEU score improvement of over 2 points,
2 points.
which doesn't sound like much.
No, not really.
But in the world of machine translation, that's huge GE.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this isn't just like a slight improvement. It's like a whole other ballgame.
It really is. It's like scientists suddenly discovering a new element or something.
Okay.
It just doesn't happen every day.
So what's the secret sauce? It all comes back to self-attention, right?
Absolutely. Remember we were talking about those long-range dependencies before the break, how traditional models struggled to connect ideas that were far apart in a sentence.
Yeah, they get lost in the weeds.
Exactly.
Lost the plot.
Well, the transformer, on the other hand, excels at this because it's able to consider the entire context of a sentence at once, even a whole paragraph. It can make those connections much more easily.
It's like the difference between reading a sentence with your eyes half closed and seeing it in high definition.
That's a great way to put it.
So we've got this model that can actually understand language in a whole new way. But what does that actually look like in practice? Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's talk about a challenge that often trips up traditional language models. Pronouns,
Pronouns. Ugh, yes.
like it, or he, or she. Figuring out what those words refer back to can be tricky, even for humans sometimes.
Especially when you've got a whole paragraph with like 5 different it's in it.
Exactly. And this is where the transformer's self-attention really shines. In the research paper we're looking at, they gave it some really tricky sentence pairs to translate, each with a different meaning for it.
Okay, so like the dog chased the ball and it went under the porch versus the dog chased the squirrel but it got away, something like that.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, we can actually visualize how the transformer figures it out.
Visualize. Oh, I'm all about visualizations. I'm a very visual learner.
Okay, so imagine you're looking at a heat map of the sentence, and the word it is highlighted.
Okay, I can picture that.
Now, as the transformer processes the sentence, it uses self-attention to figure out which other word it is most closely related to.
So if it refers to the dog, the word dog would like light up on our heat map.
Exactly. It's like the transformer saying, aha, I see what you did there. It means dog in this case.
That's so cool.
It is cool. It's this ability to see the connections, the relationships between words that makes the transformer so powerful.
So it's not just mindlessly swapping words from one language to another. It's actually understanding the meaning behind them.
Right.
That is pretty mind-blowing.
And it gets even more mind-blowing
Mm-hmm.
because it turns out that this same ability to understand relationships, to see the connections that make up language, also makes the transformer surprisingly good at something else. Grammar.
Hold on, wait a minute. You're telling me this thing can diagram sentences too?
You got it. It turns out that this self-attention thing, which is amazing for translation, is also incredibly effective for something called constituency parsing.
Constituency parsing. Now, there are some words I haven't heard in a while.
It's basically a fancy way of saying figuring out the grammatical structure of a sentence, identifying the subject, the verb, the object, all that stuff we learned or maybe didn't learn in school.
Oh, like those sentence diagrams with all the little branches? I actually kind of like those.
Well, the transformer does too, apparently. The same architecture that achieved those groundbreaking results in machine translation was able to achieve near state-of-the-art results in constituency parsing as well.
So we're not talking about some one-trick pony here.
Nope.
This is a versatile linguistic genius.
It really is. But here's the thing. Even with all that we've talked about, we're still just scratching the surface of what the transformer can do.
Wait, there's more.
Oh yeah, way more. This technology has implications far beyond language. Researchers are already exploring its use in understanding images, videos, you name it.
Wow. So it's like we're teaching machines to see the world the way we do.
Exactly. And that brings up some really fascinating questions about the future of AI.
Okay, now you've really got me thinking. But I think we need to take a quick break. We'll be back in a flash to dive into that philosophical rabbit hole. Don't go anywhere. You know, it's kind of funny. We're talking about artificial intelligence, ones and zeros, all that. But this transformer thing really has me thinking about what it means to be human.
It's true. A whole field just raises these big philosophical questions. We're not just building smarter machines, are we? It's like we're trying to understand ourselves better in the process.
Yeah, exactly. And you were saying before the break that the transformer has implications even beyond language, which is already a lot to wrap my head around. What else can it do?
Well, remember how we were talking about how it sees the bigger picture, the relationships between things?
Yeah, like it's making connections that other models miss.
Right. And it turns out that that's not just limited to words.
Really? Get out of here. You're saying it can understand, like, images and videos.
Exactly. Researchers are already using it to analyze images, like recognizing objects in a scene, but then also understanding how those objects relate to each other.
Okay, hold on. Break that down for me. So, like, it can tell that there's a cat sitting on a mat.
Right. But more than that, it can understand that the cat is on the mat, not next to it, not behind it. It understands the relationship.
Whoa. That is next level.
And it gets even crazier. Imagine applying that to videos,
Hmm.
where you don't just have spatial relationships, but temporal ones too. The transformer could actually start to understand sequences of events.
So you're saying it could watch a video and understand what's happening?
Potentially. It could recognize actions. It could even maybe start to predict what might happen next.
Okay, from translating languages to maybe predicting the future, that's a pretty big leap.
It is. And honestly, I think we're only just scratching the surface here as these models get even more sophisticated.
It's kind of scary to think about.
Who knows what we might discover about AI, about the world, even about ourselves.
See, that's what I keep coming back to. It's like, if the transformer can learn and understand information in a way that's so similar to how our brains work.
Right, because it's all about connecting ideas, recognizing patterns, building meaning from context. That's what our brains would do naturally, and that's what makes the transformer so effective.
It's almost like we're holding up a mirror to our own minds by studying it.
Exactly. And by understanding how the transformer works, we might actually unlock some secrets about how our own brains process information.
That is wild.
Isn't it? It could have huge implications for education, psychology, even neuroscience.
I'm telling you, this whole thing just makes you think big questions about artificial intelligence, sure,
Mhm.
but also about what it means to be human. Like, what makes our brains so special?
It's all connected.
Well, on that note, huge thank you to you for taking us on this wild ride through the world of the Transformer.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, keep those minds curious and stay tuned for more deep dives into the cutting edge